I stood there at the port of Miami with my Louis Vuitton suitcase, the one my late husband bought me 30 years ago, watching my daughter's mouth move, but the words weren't making sense. The salt air mixed with diesel fumes, seagulls screaming overhead, and somewhere behind me a family was laughing. But all I could hear was the rushing sound in my ears, like I was drowning on dry land. "Only 3 cabins, Mom. We didn't think you'd actually come." That's what she said. Lauren. My baby girl. The daughter I carried for 9 months, nursed through colic, raised alone after her father died. The one I put through Stanford on a widow's pension and part-time bookkeeping jobs that left my hands cramped and my eyes burning at 2 in the morning. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world right now, I want you to drop a comment and tell me where you're from. Because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know that somewhere out there, someone understands what it feels like when the people you die for act like you're already dead. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me. Please. Check the description box below for more stories like mine, because I'm about to tell you how I made them see me again. The cruise ship loomed behind her like a floating city, 12 decks of luxury I'd paid for with money I'd been saving for 7 years. $18,000. Every penny of my retirement fund that wasn't locked away in accounts I couldn't touch. I'd planned this trip for months, called it my final family adventure before my body got too old to enjoy it. The Mediterranean. Greece, Italy, Croatia. Places I'd dreamed about since I was a girl reading National Geographic in the Tulsa Public Library. Lauren stood there in her designer sundress, Tom Ford sunglasses pushed up on her head, looking like she'd just told me we were out of milk instead of that I wasn't welcome on the vacation I'd funded. Behind her, I could see my son-in-law Trevor loading their luggage onto a porter's cart. My 2 grandchildren, Olivia and Jake, were glued to their phones, not even looking in my direction. "What do you mean, 3 cabins?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. 72 years old, and I still couldn't find my angry voice when I needed it most. Lauren sighed like I was being difficult. "We booked 1 for us, 1 for Trevor's parents, and 1 for the kids. The ship was almost sold out when we finalized everything. You said you wanted to treat the family, so we thought you meant, contribute. Not actually come. Contribute. Like I was some distant aunt sending a check to a wedding I wasn't invited to. Lauren, I sold your father's truck for this. That old Chevy he restored." She didn't even flinch. "Mom, that thing was falling apart. You should have sold it years ago." She glanced at her Apple Watch. "Look, boarding closes in 45 minutes. The cruise line has a customer service desk. They can help you book the next sailing. It's only a 2-week wait." 2 weeks. Like I had 2 weeks to just hang around Miami. Like I hadn't arranged for my neighbor Dorothy to feed my cat, told my bridge club I'd be gone, missed my doctor's appointment for the pain in my hip that kept me up at night. Trevor's parents emerged from somewhere, Roger and Patricia Ainsworth, with their matching Patagonia jackets and expensive luggage. Patricia gave me this tight smile, the kind you give strangers in an elevator. "Betty, so nice to see you," she said, getting my name wrong. "It's Barbara. We're just thrilled about this trip. Lauren tells us you arranged everything." I wanted to tell her that yes, I'd arranged everything, including apparently arranging to be excluded from my own family vacation. But my throat had closed up, and I felt that familiar burning behind my eyes that meant tears were coming. "Mom, come on." Lauren actually rolled her eyes. "Don't make this into a thing. You're always so dramatic." Dramatic. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my words, made myself small, let things go. When Lauren forgot my 70th birthday because she was busy with work. When she didn't come to the hospital when I had my gallbladder removed because it wasn't life-threatening. When she stopped calling unless she needed something. Money for Olivia's private school, help with a down payment on their lake house, a loan for Trevor's investment opportunity that never paid me back. I looked past her at the cruise ship. The oceanic splendor. I'd memorized every detail from the brochure. The dining rooms where I'd planned to order champagne and oysters. The deck where I'd imagined watching the sunset over the Aegean Sea. "Actually," I heard myself say, my voice steadier now, "I think I'll talk to the cruise line about this. There must be some mistake." Lauren's expression shifted to something like annoyance mixed with pity. Mom, there's no mistake. We made a decision as a family. You need to respect that. As a family. A family I apparently wasn't part of. I turned and walked away before any of them could say another word, pulling my suitcase behind me, its wheels clicking rhythmically on the concrete. Behind me, I heard Lauren say something to Trevor, heard them all start moving toward the ship. Nobody called after me. Nobody said wait. I made it to the parking garage before I let myself stop walking. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my car keys twice trying to unlock the rental car. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open, my feet still on the ground, and stared at nothing. 72 years old. Widowed at 40. Raised 2 children alone. Worked until my fingers went numb. Saved every dollar I could. And for what? My phone buzzed. A text from Lauren, "Have a safe drive home, Mom. We'll send pictures." I sat there in that parking garage for almost an hour, and somewhere inside me, something started to change. Not sadness. Not anymore. Something harder. Something I hadn't felt in decades. I opened my phone and pulled up the booking confirmation I'd saved. The $18,000 had been charged to my credit card 3 months ago. My name was listed as the primary booker. I'd made all the arrangements, added all the passengers, paid for everything including the drink packages and shore excursions Lauren had insisted on. Then I did something I should have done a long time ago. I called the cruise line. The customer service representative who answered sounded tired, probably dealing with angry customers all day. But when I explained my situation, carefully, calmly, leaving out the parts that made me sound like a pathetic old woman, her voice changed. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. Let me look at your booking." I heard typing on the other end. "Okay, I see this reservation. Mediterranean cruise, 12 days, departing today. And you're listed as the primary guest and the card holder for all charges." More typing. "Ma'am, I have to ask, did you authorize all these passengers?" Something in her tone made my spine straighten. "I paid for everything. I thought I was going on this cruise with my family." "I understand. And I'm showing here that you're not assigned to any of the cabins, is that correct?" Apparently they only booked 3 cabins. 6 people. And I'm the one who's supposed to catch the next sailing. The typing stopped. "Ma'am, as the primary cardholder and booking agent, you have certain rights. Are you aware that you can modify this reservation?" My heart started beating faster. "Modify it how?" "Well, technically, since your card was charged and you're the account holder, you have the authority to make changes to the passenger manifest up until the ship departs." I closed my eyes and saw Lauren's face when she told me to catch the next ship. Saw Trevor's smug expression. Saw my grandchildren not even looking up from their phones. Saw years and years of being taken for granted, pushed aside, treated like an ATM with a pulse. "What if," I said slowly, "I wanted to be the only one on this cruise?" The representative put me on hold. The hold music was some instrumental version of a song I didn't recognize. I sat there watching a family walk past with matching t-shirts, and I thought about all the family trips I'd planned when Lauren was small. The way I'd made every holiday special even when there was barely enough money for groceries. A man's voice came on the line. "Mrs. Patterson? This is Michael, the shift supervisor. I understand you're having an issue with your Mediterranean cruise booking." I told him everything. The real version. How I'd saved for years. How I'd sold my dead husband's restored truck. How I'd shown up at the port with my suitcase and my daughter told me there was no room for the woman who'd paid for everything. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Mrs. Patterson, I'm a son myself. I'm 43 years old, and my mother is 70, and if I ever treated her the way you've been treated, she'd probably knock some sense into me. And she'd be right to do it." My eyes burned with tears, but they were different tears than before. "Thank you for saying that. Now, let me be clear about your options here. You are the primary card holder. Your credit card was charged $18,000 for this cruise. You have the legal right to determine who uses that booking. But they're already checking in. They might already be on the ship. The ship doesn't depart for another 35 minutes. We have security protocols for situations where there are disputes about bookings. He paused. What exactly would you like to do, Mrs. Patterson? I thought about being the bigger person, the way I'd been my whole life. Always accommodating everyone else's needs while my own dreams got pushed into corners and forgotten. I want them off the ship, I heard myself say. All of them except me. I want to go on my cruise alone. If you've ever been pushed to your breaking point by the people who should love you most, you know this feeling. That moment when you realize being kind has gotten you nowhere except walked on. Stay with me here, because what happened next, I still can't believe I actually went through with it. 20 minutes later, I was standing at the customer service desk in the terminal, with my driver's license and credit card spread out in front of me. A woman named Jennifer with kind eyes was processing my request. Behind the desk, I could hear radio chatter, security coordinating something. This is highly unusual, Jennifer said, but she was smiling a little. But everything is in order. You're well within your rights. She printed out forms. I signed my name over and over, my hand steadier each time. Barbara Jean Patterson. That was me. Not someone's mother, not someone's wallet. Me. The door to the security office opened, and my family came through. Lauren saw me first. Her face went from confusion to understanding to rage so fast it was almost funny. Mom? What's going on? Security pulled us off the ship. Trevor was right behind her, his face red. Barbara, what did you do? I stood up. I invested $18,000 in what I thought would be our dream Mediterranean cruise, I said, my voice clear and steady. Standing at the port with my luggage, you casually mentioned, oh, by the way, we only booked 3 cabins. You'll need to catch the next sailing. So I made a phone call. What did you do? Lauren's voice went up an octave. Jennifer stepped forward with her professional smile. Your mother, as the primary cardholder and booking agent, has exercised her right to modify the passenger manifest. She will be the only one sailing on this cruise. You'll need to collect your luggage and exit the terminal. The silence was deafening. $18,000, Trevor. That's what I paid. That's my retirement savings. That's money I saved from working bookkeeping jobs that made my hands cramp. That's the money from selling my dead husband's truck, the truck Lauren's father spent 2 years restoring before he died. And you know what all of you said to me today? You said to catch the next ship. Mom, you're being insane, Lauren hissed. You can't do this. We have kids with us. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, Lauren. Where was I supposed to go? Back home to my empty house to feed the cat while you all enjoyed the Mediterranean on my dime? Maybe you could catch the next sailing. In 2 weeks. Patricia found her voice. This is absurd. We had no idea about any of this financial arrangement. Neither did I, Patricia. I had no idea I was paying for your cabin while I got left at the dock. By the way, my name is Barbara, not Betty. I turned to Jennifer. Can I board now? As I walked away, pulling my suitcase behind me, Lauren called after me, Mom, wait. We can talk about this. We can fix this. I stopped but didn't turn around. No, Lauren. We can't. Because fixing this would require you to see me as a person instead of a checkbook, and I don't think you know how to do that anymore. Jennifer led me through a different security line, down a carpeted hallway, and through a door marked concierge boarding. Suddenly I was on the ship, stepping onto gleaming floors with sunlight streaming through massive windows. Mrs. Patterson, Jennifer said, I just want to say, you did the right thing. What happened to you today wasn't right. My eyes filled with tears, but I was smiling. Thank you. That means more than you know. My cabin was bigger than my living room back home. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out at the port. A king-sized bed with white linens. A bottle of champagne on ice with a note, Welcome aboard, Mrs. Patterson. I walked out onto the balcony and looked down at the port below. Somewhere down there, Lauren and Trevor and Roger and Patricia were probably still in the terminal, furious and shocked and maybe, just maybe thinking about what they'd done. The ship's horn blew, deep and resonant. We were about to depart. I opened the champagne and poured myself a glass. Held it up to the Mediterranean sun. To me, I said out loud. To finally choosing myself. The ship began to move, pulling away from the dock, and I stood there watching Miami get smaller and smaller behind us. Somewhere in my purse, my phone started buzzing. Text messages, probably. Angry ones. For now, I just stood there with my champagne and watched the open ocean spread out before me. If you've ever had to choose between being polite and being respected, you understand this moment. And if you're wondering what happened after I sailed away on my revenge cruise, well, you need to hear the rest. Check the description box below for more stories about standing up for yourself when everyone expects you to lie down. The first night on the ship, I ate dinner alone at a table for one in the main dining room. The waiter, a young man from the Philippines named Carlo, asked if I was expecting company. I told him no, just me for the whole cruise. He smiled and said, "Then you will be my favorite guest." He brought me lobster tail and filet mignon and a dessert that looked like a work of art. Other diners sat with their families, their friends. I sat alone with my plate and my glass of wine and tried to figure out if I felt triumphant or just terribly, terribly lonely. My phone had 47 text messages by the time I checked it. I sat on my balcony in the darkness and made myself read them. Lauren, Mom, you have humiliated this entire family. Lauren, we had to book last-minute flights home. Do you know how much that cost? Trevor, this is elder abuse in reverse. You've lost your mind. There were more. Olivia had texted, "Grandma, why did you do that? Everyone's crying." That one hurt more than the others, but I made myself remember that Olivia hadn't even looked at me at the port. My son Daniel had texted too, "Mom, Lauren called me freaking out." What happened? At least he was asking, not assuming. I put the phone down and looked out at the ocean. Just water and stars and the lights from the ship reflecting on the waves. It was beautiful. It was the most alone I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, I went to breakfast. The buffet was enormous. I filled my plate with things I never let myself have at home, pastries and bacon and fresh fruit. A woman about my age sat down at the table next to mine. "First cruise?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "You?" "Fifth. I do one every year. My husband died 6 years ago, and I decided I wasn't going to stop living just because he was gone." She extended her hand. "I'm Helen. Barbara." We talked for an hour. She told me about her life, her 3 kids who were too busy for her, her decision to spend her retirement doing exactly what she wanted. I told her a little about my situation. "You did the right thing," Helen said. "Family is supposed to lift you up, not use you as a stepping stone." Those words stayed with me as the days passed. The ship stopped at the Azores, and I walked through cobblestone streets alone. At Gibraltar, I took the cable car up to see the monkeys. In Barcelona, I wandered through the Gothic quarter and lit a candle in a church that had stood for 800 years. Every night, Carlo served me dinner, and every night he asked about my day. Sometimes Helen joined me, and we'd talk about our lives, our regrets, our small rebellions. But the texts kept coming. "Lauren, I hope you're enjoying yourself. We're home explaining to everyone why we're not on the cruise. Trevor, you're going to regret this when you're old and alone and need someone to take care of you." That one made me laugh bitterly. I was already old. I was already alone. On the 5th day, we docked in Rome, and I took a tour of the Colosseum. Standing in that ancient arena, I thought about battles and survival and what it means to fight for yourself. The tour guide talked about the emperors and the way the Romans had engineered this massive structure that still stood 2,000 years later. "They built things to last," the guide said. I thought about impermanence. About how quickly love can turn cold. About how easily you can become invisible to people who once needed you desperately. That night, I finally called Daniel. "Mom, are you okay?" Just hearing his voice made my eyes well up. "I'm on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. I'm fine." "Lauren said you lost it. That you kicked everyone off the cruise." I told him the whole story. Every detail. The way Lauren had told me to catch the next ship. The way nobody had defended me. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Jesus, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't know Lauren was like that." "Neither did I." "I'm glad you did it," he said. "That's really brave, Mom." Brave. Nobody had ever called me brave before. The next day was Greece. Santorini, with its white buildings and blue domes. I walked through the narrow streets, bought olive oil from a local vendor, sat at a cafe and drank coffee so strong it made my hands shake. In Athens, I climbed the steps to the Acropolis. My hip hurt, and I had to stop several times to rest, but I made it. Stood at the top looking out at the city spread below, at the Parthenon rising behind me, at the history and ruins and beauty. A young couple was taking selfies nearby, laughing and kissing. I watched them and felt a pang of something that might have been envy or might have been memory. My husband had been dead for 32 years. Sometimes I could barely remember his face. But I remembered how it felt to be loved, to be chosen, to matter to someone. That night, I had dinner with Helen again, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You know what the hardest part is," she said. "The guilt. You're going to feel guilty for doing something that was completely justified. But Barbara, listen to me. You didn't abandon them. They abandoned you. Not the other way around." I keep thinking about my grandchildren. They're going to remember this as the time their crazy grandmother ruined everything. Or they're going to grow up and realize their grandmother was the only one with any self-respect. I wanted to believe her. But lying in bed that night, all I could think about was Lauren's face when security escorted them off the ship. The shock. The betrayal. The rage. Part of me felt justified. Part of me felt like a monster. The ship sailed on through the night, and I lay there wondering if standing up for yourself was supposed to hurt this much, if doing the right thing was supposed to feel this wrong. If you've ever won a battle but wondered if you lost something more important in the process, you know where I was. But the story doesn't end here. Check the description below for more stories about choices that change everything, because what happened when I got home changed me in ways I never saw coming. The cruise ended in Barcelona, and I flew home to Ohio on a rainy Tuesday. My neighbor Dorothy picked me up from the airport. My house looked smaller than I remembered. The cat, Stella, was annoyed with me for leaving. 3 days after I got home, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Lauren standing on my porch, and my heart just about stopped. She looked tired. No makeup, hair in a ponytail, wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt. For a moment, she looked like my little girl again. "Can I come in?" she asked. We sat at my kitchen table in silence. Finally, she spoke. "Trevor wants me to press charges. Elder abuse or something. His parents have a lawyer friend." She looked down at her coffee. "I told him no. But he's really angry, Mom." "And what about you? How angry are you?" She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "I'm furious. I'm humiliated. She stopped, wiped at her eyes. "I'm ashamed." That wasn't what I expected. Ashamed. "Daniel called me. Told me exactly what he thought of how I treated you. And then Trevor's sister called and said if I ever treated her mother that way, she'd never speak to me again. And then I started thinking about that day at the port. Really thinking about it. About how you looked when I told you there was no cabin for you. About how you must have felt, standing there with your suitcase, after you'd paid for everything. After you'd..." She put her head in her hands. "God, Mom. You sold Dad's truck. That truck was all you had left of him." "Lauren." "No, let me finish. Please." She looked up at me. "I've been thinking about the last 7 years. About every time I called asking for money. About your 70th birthday that I forgot. About your surgery that I didn't come to. About how I only ever called when I needed something, and how you always said yes, and how I just took that for granted. Took you for granted." The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, I heard kids laughing somewhere down the street. "I don't know when I became this person," Lauren whispered. This person who treats her mother like an ATM. Who leaves her at a port. Trevor says I learned it from him, but I think it was already in me. I think I've been selfish for a long time and I just didn't want to see it. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was shaking. When security pulled us off that ship, she continued, I was so angry. I wanted to destroy you. But then we got home and I had to explain to people why we weren't on the cruise, and every time I told the story, I had to include the part about how we didn't book you a cabin. And every single person looked at me like I was a monster. Because I was. You're not a monster, Lauren. You made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to call on your birthday. This was systematic cruelty disguised as casual thoughtlessness. And the worst part? I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just assumed you'd always be there, always say yes, always forgive me. She was sobbing now, and I got up and went around the table and held her like I used to when she was small. I'm so sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry, Mom. I held her and felt my own tears coming. I forgive you, I whispered. Of course I forgive you. Why? Why would you forgive me after what I did? Because you're my daughter. Because you came here. Because you saw what you did and you're owning it. I pulled back and looked at her. But Lauren, I need you to understand something. I can forgive you, but things can't go back to the way they were. I can't go back to being invisible. She nodded. I know. I don't want that either. I want to do better. Be better. I want my kids to have a real relationship with their grandmother. I want to actually know you, Mom. Not just as someone who gives me things, but as a person. We talked for 3 hours that afternoon. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She told me about her marriage, about how Trevor had been pressuring her to ask me for money, about how she felt trapped between being a good wife and being a good daughter and failing at both. I told her about my loneliness. About how the house felt too empty. About how I'd been saving for that cruise for 7 years, dreaming of one big adventure before my body got too old. What was the cruise like? She asked finally. I thought about Helen and Carlo and the sunsets from my balcony and the ancient streets. Parts of it were lonely, I admitted. But parts of it were wonderful. I did things I never would have done if you'd all been there. I talked to strangers. I stood at the top of the Acropolis and felt proud of myself. Maybe we could take another trip someday. Just you and me. I'd love to. But Lauren, you'd have to pay your own way. I can't keep funding everyone else's dreams. Of course. Absolutely. I've just been greedy. Taking advantage because it was easier than paying for things myself. She shook her head. Trevor's going to be furious when I tell him the free money train has stopped. How is Trevor? Honestly? I don't care what Trevor thinks right now. I'm starting to realize that a lot of our problems come from him. And I've been going along with it because it was easier than standing up to him. But watching you stand up for yourself made me realize I need to do the same thing. Over the next few months, things changed slowly. Lauren started coming by once a week. She brought the kids, and I actually got to know my grandchildren. Olivia told me about her interest in marine biology. Jake showed me his drawings. He was talented, something I never knew. Lauren and Trevor went to marriage counseling. She stopped apologizing for having opinions. Daniel flew in from Seattle for Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years, all 3 of us were together. We cooked dinner in my small kitchen, laughing and telling stories. After dinner, Daniel raised his glass of wine and said, "To Mom, for teaching us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. And for showing me that forgiveness doesn't mean being a doormat," Lauren added. We clinked glasses, and I felt something in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, maybe. Or hope. Lauren paid me back the money Trevor had borrowed. I didn't ask for it, but she insisted. I'm going to pay back every dollar I've ever borrowed from you. With interest. A year later, Lauren and I took a trip together. Just a long weekend in New York. We saw a Broadway show, visited museums, ate pizza in Brooklyn. We each paid our own way. On the last night, she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me. After what I did, You could have cut me out of your life forever. You're my daughter, I said simply. That doesn't change just because we hurt each other. But it could have. Love isn't unconditional. Actions have consequences. You showed me that. I showed you that I have limits. That's different. I think setting limits is the most loving thing you've ever done for me. It forced me to see what I'd become. I thought about that day at the port. About the choice I made in that parking garage. About revenge and justice and the space between them. Do you ever regret it? Lauren asked. Kicking us off the cruise? I thought about it honestly. Sometimes. In the middle of the night, I wonder if there was a better way. But then I think about where we'd be now if I hadn't done it. You'd still be taking me for granted. We'd be stuck in the same pattern, dying slowly without even realizing it. So you don't regret it? I regret that it was necessary. But the act itself? No. I don't regret standing up for myself. I just wish I'd done it sooner. She laughed. Mom, you kicked 6 people off a cruise ship. There's no non-dramatic way to do that. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. I love you, Mom, Lauren said softly. I love you too, baby. And I meant it. Not the desperate, accommodating love I'd been offering before. Something healthier. Something with boundaries and respect and mutual care. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. Thank you for hearing about my pain and my revenge and my complicated journey toward forgiveness. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong. I'm still figuring that out myself. But I know it was necessary. I know it changed everything. Sometimes the people we love need to see us as more than their safety net, their backup plan. Sometimes they need to see us as people who can say no, who have limits, who deserve respect. And if they can't see that, then maybe they need to spend some time on the dock, watching the ship sail away, thinking about what they lost and why. My name is Barbara Patterson. I'm 73 years old now. I live alone with my cat. I play bridge on Tuesdays. I'm teaching myself to paint. And I'm planning another trip, this time to Ireland, by myself because I want to, not because I have to. I spent $18,000 on a cruise and kicked my family off the ship. It was the worst thing I've ever done. It was the best thing I've ever done. It was the thing that saved my life and my relationships and my sense of self. And I'd do it again. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and discovering that it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are in the world, whatever battles you're fighting with the people you love, I hope you find the courage to stand up for yourself too. Even if it means standing alone for a while. Especially then.